talk about, oh, we're saying the same things, same people, we go to the same film festivals, and it's always the same. But man, the choir is not mobilized enough. And I know y'all listening want to help, and I know you care deeply about these issues. Doing citizen science and actually going out and advancing our understanding of these issues, providing information that can be used to really move the needle towards a solution. I can't think of a better way of civic engagement, of being part of a movement. And it's such a powerful thing to go out and use your time and your outdoor skills and your experience to then make a lasting change in the world. That is awesome.
You're listening to the Rewilding Earth Podcast. In this episode of the Rewilding Earth Podcast, I talked with Greg Treinish, founder of Adventure Scientists, a nonprofit organization focused on mobilizing outdoor enthusiasts to collect field data for scientific research. Greg shares compelling stories about impactful projects, including a groundbreaking study on plant-fungi symbiosis on Mount Everest and tracking illegal timber poachers. We also talk about the importance of citizen science in tackling global issues like climate change and biodiversity loss, while highlighting the fun and community aspects of conservation efforts. Greg also discusses the future of Adventure Scientists' platform, aiming to further engage volunteers in scientific data collection. Be sure to visit rewilding.org/pod and look up episode 145 to find links to citizen science apps, organizations, and tools you can use to get involved in meaningful conservation work that makes a big impact. So I saw your article in San Francisco Chronicle talking about citizen science, and then I read up on your organization, and then I agreed, heck yes, you ought to be on the Rewilding Earth podcast, because people have a really strong desire, especially our listeners, to really get our hands in the dirt and go. And so anytime I get a chance to bring somebody on who can help catalyze such a thing, I jump at the chance. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we're about. And it's just so easy to say, oh, the world is screwed and we can't do anything about it. But I'm excited to be one of many great organizations that are providing a counter narrative there.
I'd love to learn more about being blind for weeks from Gorilla Scat. Just to start the show off with a bang, I really need to know more about that story. You just glossed over it in the article, and I'm like, wait a minute. There's backstory here. We got to hear more about this.
Yeah, that was brutal. So we were in Uganda, and I was working with a group there that studies how disease is transferred from humans to gorillas. And so as a result, I was going out to their nests. So I didn't really know much about the gorillas before I was there, but every night they go and they make a new nest in the forest out of leaves and sticks. And then when they get up in the morning, they do their business next to the nest, and then they go about their day, which is mostly just eating. But we were collecting these gorilla scats, and after about a day and a half after I was done doing that, I did it for 3-4 days. And then after I was done, my eye just became infected pretty quickly and started getting worse and worse. I was in Uganda and tried to find an optometrist and couldn't really find the right person. So somebody decided to give me steroids to put in the eye, which just made the infection stronger. So when I got home, so we flew home the next day, and by this point I had started to have a little bit of white on my eye, on the cornea. And then, yeah, it was really bad. I wouldn't say I was completely blind, but I could barely see out of the eye. And to this day, my prescription is now different in my right eye after dealing with that.
Wow. I started thinking about citizen science and people going out and collecting data and things, but you seem like you've had a little bit of a dalliance with adventure science, because that's not where the stories stop with landslides and being charged by hippos. You're not asking people to go get charged by hippos or get poop eye, are you?
We certainly don't want anybody to get poop eye. No, no, I'm not. Listen, like there are people who are out there doing crazy adventures well on their own, and we want those people to come and collect data for us. Absolutely. We also have space for people who are out on very tame day hikes and maybe are getting dive bombed by the occasional crow or raven or something. But that's the only adventure really required to join us at Adventure Scientists.
What's the gap like in the problem that you're trying to solve? And what are we talking about here in terms of the potential for people to help?
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And the truth is, the world is awash in data now. We can look at remote sensing data. We can now look at just about every single tree on Earth and get the carbon stock and water stock of that tree. There is so much data in the world. And the reality is, there are still massive amounts of data that, if in the hands of problem solvers, decision makers, managers, could make a tremendous difference. And so, as you look at any given issue, whether it's the harmful algal bloom issue, biodiversity loss, climate change, there in each of these different fields, there are absolutely ways that we can accelerate and amplify solutions to these issues. And that's the most fun part of my job is I get to go and meet with these problem solvers, incredible people working at the forefront of each of these issues and ask them, hey, what would an army of trained people do for you? How could we accelerate your impact? How could we get you to a solution more quickly? And watching them light up and then to start to geek out with me on their science and what it is they're doing, that's the most fun part about what I get to do.
What was the lay of the land like before you started Adventure Scientists, which, by the way, anybody can check out at adventurescientists.org. I've always heard stories, anecdotal stuff that here and there where scientists would just wish out loud to have more data or to have more volunteers. As soon as I get on your website, I'm like, this is exactly where you shake hands. If you're a volunteer and you get to find people who are doing work that really needs to be done and they really need your help. Is it rare? Are you one of the first? Or was it always just like I described, people just find what they can find and there was no real organization before?
Yeah, I think the citizen science as a field obviously goes way back. We're talking about even some of the first great explorers, John Tyndall and Darwin and people like that. They didn't have formal education or training. They just loved and had a passion for the outdoors and for adventure and made some incredible discoveries. And then we've got citizen science projects where people, even like the first weather patterns and the first ways that we traced weather across the globe was through telegraph and people just saying to the next town over, hey, you're about to get a storm. We just got it and it's moving your way. Maybe not quite all those words on the telegraph. Citizen science has been around a really long time. And there have been some great projects that are ongoing for decades and decades now. Things like the Christmas bird count, Project Aware is a great diving project. And those are, like you said, really one-off, very focused projects. There really hasn't been an organization like ours where a scientist can come to us and say, hey, I need data to solve this problem. If I had 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people who were trained to go out and get this data, I could do something really powerful with it. So that hasn't existed before. And then for an organization to then take that and build out a community effort in a citizen science program like we do, I'm not aware of any other organizations that have done that. Around the same time that we started back in 2011, it was also the time when things like iNaturalist got started. This is a cool app that you can download, and what I use it for is it helps me with my plant ID. And so every time I see a new plant or even insect on the ground and I get a picture of it, it helps me figure out exactly what it is, which I love. And as an aggregate data set, there's a lot of really powerful information in there. And then there's a group called SciStarter, which is this is more of a platform where anybody can post a project and then volunteers can get on there. But what we do at Adventure Scientists is really curate these projects bespoke. We're working with the researchers, often with coalitions of researchers who are saying, hey, we are really concerned about the reforestation issue. We don't have enough seed across the United States to replant after large scale forest fires. So, what would it take to go out and figure out where trees are putting out large numbers of cones in what's called a masting event? So, trees don't just put out the same number of cones each year, they have what are called masting events and will put out huge numbers of cones in every 3 years for some species. It's really unpredictable. But if we could send out hundreds of scouts to go say, okay, this is where the lodgepole pine is putting out tons of seed. This is where the ponderosa pine, and you can go through the list of conifers and then say, this is where we need to collect the seed from. All of a sudden, the seed stocks in the United States could drastically improve. And we are grossly short on what we need for reforestation. Other examples, I could go on and on here, but other examples are, we have an illegal timber poaching issue, believe it or not. Even in the United States, $1 billion are stolen out of forests each year. Internationally, that number soars to $150 billion. And the research community, and the law enforcement community, and the forestry community that works on this issue told us that if they could get samples from thousands of trees across the range of each different species, that they would be able to trace the origin of a piece of wood back to that tree and within 20 kilometers. It's incredible technology. So to be
Wow.
able to go out and organize an army of, in our case, we did about 350 people per species to go out and collect these thousands of samples, we've made that possible for our partners.
Wow. Then that starts making me think this could really get out of hand. Does it get overwhelming at times? Because you're talking about a huge need, and how much of that can your organization handle?
Yeah, we're a small organization and limitations are always there for sure. I hate to make it so simple, but the more money we have, the more resources we have, the more we can do. That's what it comes down to. And so it's a matter of finding philanthropic donors who are really interested in what we do. We do have a partial fee for service model as well. So a lot of the projects we do are this more of a contract type thing. But yeah, it gets overwhelming with the need. What's so exciting though is that we are focused on projects where there's a tangible theory of change, where something's really going to improve if we take on this project. And so to be able to look across the landscape of different scientific needs and pick out those ones that are really moving the needle for solutions, that's actually really inspiring and overwhelming in a good way, right? Like that's what I love about adventure scientists and what we get to do is we get to pick and choose these projects that if we collect these data, it unlocks some future solution. Now that still might take a decade to come to realization, but when we can find those, it's a really powerful thing. And then on the volunteer side, it's hard because we often do have to turn away volunteers. We have wait lists on many of our projects. We just launched one today and had a 1,300 person interest list, and we can accommodate the majority of those, but not every single one of them. Yeah, there's some projects, it's funny, that just attract a ton of attention and people just are on wait lists for days and weeks even before they can get in. And then on other ones, we really got to pound the pavement and give speeches and make sure people are hearing about us and work really hard for that. So it's just a mix as to which project we get going and how people hear about it. And we're lucky enough to get picked up on the Rewilding podcast. That's going to hit a lot of listeners, and they're going to learn about what we do and increase our volunteer numbers for sure.
Your title for the article asked a question, feeling powerless in the fight against climate change. And you could have the same exact title and just change it to biodiversity loss.
Yeah.
You could change it to all kinds of topics. And people are always writing in asking, what can I do in my area? How do you organize volunteers who are willing if you don't have anything in their area at the time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, just staying engaged in these conversations. We often are hosting webinars and have conversations with scientists, and that's a way that you can stay tuned in. We have volunteers who love to travel and explore new places. And so our current projects, we've got one in California. We've got one today that we launched in six Eastern states. So we get some good coverage, but you're right. It's not always that we've got something in hyperlocal areas for people. But that's where the broader citizen science movement is a really powerful way for anybody to get involved. And the projects, what you'll find out there on places like SciStarter and citsci.org is another. The projects you'll find out there range from purely educational, where it's more about getting kids out and having an experience in the woods, all the way through to really meaningful data collection. Now, Adventure Scientist is really on the extreme end of that spectrum, where we're looking for the projects that have the most impact, where we can really focus a group of skilled people towards one common issue and really move the needle for that issue. But other organizations will have anything along that spectrum and great ways to get involved.
You're listening to the Rewilding Earth Podcast. Did you know we also publish insightful and inspirational content from leading rewilding scholars, poets, artists, and organizers from around the world? You can visit rewilding.org and sign up for our weekly digest to receive brilliant, fresh insights on everything rewilding. You'll find over a decade of articles and news from the front lines of wildlands protection and all kinds of restoration efforts. Check us out at rewilding.org, and don't forget to share it with friends.
I was going to ask you too about Cornell's eBird. I've actually felt pretty darn useful as a citizen scientist by doing the migration checklist on there. What is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Even when there's nothing else really going on, you can still do stuff like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. eBird is a great one. Honestly, like even just using the Merlin Bird app, which any of us who are out there a lot, I have almost certainly come across now. If you haven't, get on there, because it'll identify all the bird sounds for you, and then you can actually correct them if you know differently, if you think it's a different species. And just having those recordings helps train their algorithms too. So just being on there is really cool and helpful. And again, iNaturalist is another. The National Phenology Network is another, where you can go and talk, and you can document when plants are budding and when their flowers are emerging, and we're tracking climate change that way. There's the Xerces Society that covers bumblebees and pollinators. So yeah, there's a lot of great programs out there that you can get involved with, even if Adventure Scientist doesn't have something going on in your area.
I like the name, actually, because I don't know why, but it reminds me of the first time I heard of a conservation biologist. And Michael Soule, just trying to get scientists to think a little differently about their role. If they see something, say something. And that didn't used to be the role for scientists. They stayed in the lab, so to speak, and certainly didn't venture opinions or ideas outside of their, or as a part of their research. And he changed that whole thing by bringing up the whole idea of conservation biology. And Adventure Scientist feels the same way. It feels action and motion and things getting done and results that can be reported on.
Yeah. First of all, you mentioned Michael Soule, and I can't let that slide. Like he's a hero, obviously. And I had the great honor of working with him on an advisory board for what was called the Western Wildlands Network. And John Davis was doing these incredible treks. And we worked with him to give him some protocols that he could use to document wildlife, and particularly grizzly bears and wolverines and things like that, as he was moving across the Western Wildway. And I think he did the Eastern Wildway as well, and has gone on to do other amazing things. So shout out to Michael, and he passed in 2020, but was an amazing ecologist and conservation biologist, as you mentioned. And yeah, Adventure Scientist is definitely created in that image. And George Schaller, another, just this idea that we love these places and we're there all the time, and giving people some basic training and tools that they can use to be part of the change and be part of the difference that they wish they could. It's so powerful. It's amazing. And I first felt this really selfish feeling when I was out on the Appalachian Trail. I hiked that in 2004. And man, I felt like I was asking myself the whole time, what is this all about? What am I really here for? And it took a minute to get from there to the sciences, but when I started working in the sciences and realized, like, listen, I don't have a PhD. I am very persistent, and I like to do long endurance trips and expeditions and things like that. but I'm not a great athlete. I just love being outside. I love mountain biking. I love skiing. And I was just saying to myself, how can I use this outdoor pursuit and use my time outside to make a real difference? And when I was working in these biology tech jobs, I was tracking owls and sturgeons and other cool stuff. I was making that difference. And then when I started talking to friends about it from the outdoor community and just telling them what I was doing, they just lit up. And I saw this beautiful opportunity to get the people who love and care about these places connected with real scientists who need the data, but just either can't get to the places because they're too remote or far away, or they don't have the outdoor skills, or they just can't do it at the scale that you require. We had 25 people all at once, all above 6,000 meters, collecting samples for a researcher named Drago Zaharescu from the Biosphere 2 program down at the University of Arizona. And he could have gone and done one, but all of a sudden he had access to 25 peaks all at once, all in the same day, and has kept that network going. So it's just this really fun also. Like, we got to keep fun at the center of conservation, and too often it's doom and gloom and the world is screwed, and we can feel so down about it. But if we make it fun and give people ways that they can actually see change and be part of that change, man, we have so much hope.
Now, you've alluded to another conservation hero along those lines. Dave Foreman always said that we need to focus on fun. People need to have fun doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
We're covering all the bases today.
Yeah, shouting out a lot of amazing people. And I just wanted to shout out one more. Jane Goodall just got the Presidential Medal of Freedom last week. I named my daughter after her. My daughter's middle name her name's Maris Goodall Treinish, and just another amazing hero. So fun to see them getting recognized, and that their legacies are going to live on for an awful long time.
What are some cool stories about data that was gathered through your organization's volunteers that has led to really significant stuff?
Really early on, back in 2011, we sent two climbers, Willie and Damian Benegas, they had told us they had seen plants up near Camp 2 on Mount Everest. And we did some research and realized pretty quickly that if that's true, that would shatter the known elevation record for plants by 4,000 to 5,000 feet. So it was really exciting. And we partnered him with two researchers, one from Montana State, Tim McDermott, and Rusty Rodriguez from the University of Washington and USGS. And the theory was that there would be fungi living symbiotically with whatever plant this was up there. And sure enough, plant was there. We developed a protocol and had those guys collect moss up at 21,260 feet.
Wow.
And in there were 5 fungi living symbiotically with the moss, enabling it to take nutrients up in this completely nutrient poor environment. And Rusty actually went on to create a company called Adaptive Symbiotic Technologies. They have inoculated millions and millions of acres of cropland, including on 10,000 small farms in India. So they are doubling crop yields without the need for synthetic fertilizers. And the product does better in the more marginalized soils that you can apply it in, and increases yields dramatically, again, without NPKs, which, as you probably know, are causing harmful algal blooms and hypoxic zones at the mouths of rivers all across the world. So the promise of this technology is just so exciting. So that was one of the very first. We worked with Harvard Medical School on a study of animal scats, just harping back to my love for gorilla poos and all kinds of different poos. But so we collected from about 110 different countries for them, and they are looking for the origins of antibiotic resistance. And so we studied a particular genus of bacteria called Enterococcus. And the idea here is that if you could figure out the genes responsible in Enterococcus, it would very likely transfer over to other types of multi-drug resistant infections. And we've helped them narrow the search for those genes, and they're on a path towards creating the first genetic interventions for antibiotic resistance, which, if that's left untreated, if that's left unmitigated, that's going to kill about 50 million people a year by the year 2050. So that's a massive looming threat that we are working with Harvard to get ahead of. And then I've
Wow.
alluded to this already, but we've collected these genetic reference libraries for trees. We've done this now for 9 species. We just launched our 10th yesterday, or today rather, hemlock. And this is an effort to document, again, the fine scale, both chemicals and genetics that allow you to trace wood to its origin. We've had 2 cases fought and won in the United States utilizing genetic data, the first of their kind, for illegal timber poachers. This is a really big issue. It's shocking, actually. 1 in 3 wood products that you buy internationally has been illegally sourced. 1 out of every 3.
Oof. Man, I bet those guys were surprised when the court told them how they were discovered.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I heard a similar story. I think it was Belize, somewhere in the Amazon, when people who were doing illegal slash and burn were told how they were discovered deep in the Amazon. Some of them didn't have the way to conceptualize what they were being told, but they were discovered from outer space. It was satellite imagery. And there was a funny story somebody told once about how they were faced with the problem of trying to describe space and everything to people who were like, what are you talking about? Anyway, you're busted, dude. You can't do that here. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these technologies, like, it's really amazing how far things have come, even in my time here and my time at the organization. This year, we're hoping to launch a project to survey methane emissions from orphaned and idled oil and gas wells across the eastern United States. We're going to be able to use handheld methane sensors for the first time. And when we first built this project, I think it was 2016 or 17, those didn't exist. It wasn't an option. So it's just constantly getting easier and easier to collect these data, and cheaper too, which makes it feasible for our model.
I wonder what, if anybody cared to do this study. I don't know how it would be like mega important, but it's interesting to me how much giving people the ability to go out and do research that formerly was not organized. People didn't know what to do. They had their wish lists, but they didn't know how to get them accomplished or get volunteers or whatever. I wonder how much just your kind of activity has helped promote new technologies, because you've got people out there. Your volunteers could be retired engineers. They could be doctors. They could be all kinds of different people who have a really good and unique insight in some of the things that maybe you wouldn't think about, or the project lead hadn't thought about while they're out there doing this data collection. It seems like a really rich, innovative environment, or at least potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had volunteers that will call in and say, hey, I've got a better way to do this part of the project. And we just absolutely love that. And you're right. They're retired engineers. We have a lot of retired people. We also have a lot of people at the beginning of their careers, and they'll bring really amazing ideas for how we can get the word out better and how we can be more efficient. We're always looking to learn and grow here too. We complain in these circles all the time about preaching to the choir, right? We talk about, we're saying the same things, same people. We go to the same film festivals, and it's always the same. But man, the choir is not mobilized enough. And I know y'all listening want to help, and I know you care deeply about these issues. Doing citizen science and actually going out and advancing our understanding of these issues, providing information that can be used to really move the needle towards a solution. I can't think of a better way of civic engagement, of being part of a movement. And it's such a powerful thing to go out and use your time and your outdoor skills and your experience to then make a lasting change in the world. That is awesome.
Yeah. Anytime that I've been involved where there was a purpose beyond having fun, if it was a river rafting trip, or it was a tracking expedition, or anything like that, ripping out roads in the Southwest, illegal roads on Forest Service land, really hard work. I had to organize that for a few years with Sky Island Alliance. And I'm like, how are we going to get people to come and break their backs doing this in the heat and everything else and it could have been as easy as somebody making a really delicious meal and a campfire at the end of the day where everybody can talk about how things went, and just being there. There turned out to be a lot of reasons that people love to come and do that work. And we're always dying to do it the year after and the year after. And it just kept growing. And now Sky Island Alliance has got a huge network of volunteers that go out throughout all the Sky Islands and doing all kinds of different things, not just the camera trap stuff, but they've become a huge data collecting source, that little organization, or formerly little organization. So it's really exciting to see this stuff.
Yeah, no, I love Sky Islands. Also, I know a good friend of mine, Danny Giavalli, is involved there as well.
Oh, he's a big supporter of Rewilding Institute. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, Danny's rad. He owns Tula, the microspike company. So really great company and supporting a great organization like Sky Islands. Yeah, those community building experiences, man, it's what it's all about. And if you're not doing it and you're not having fun, then you're just complaining about these issues.
What are some things you're looking forward to in the future? Just seeing what the trajectory's been so far. What are some of the goals looking forward?
Yeah. For me, it's all about impact. I just think about everything that I do and that we get up for in the morning is really about how can we leverage the incredible network we've built, but the incredible network that is the outdoor community to really advance solutions for these issues. And my job and what we're doing is really focused on getting to the right partners, the leaders in the environmental movement who are at the forefront and ready to embrace this model as a means to accelerate their work. And I think the quicker we can find those people, those scientific partners, build the programs with them, and then mobilize our community, that just makes me so excited. I'd love to see a world where every time we go in the outdoors, every time we have the privilege of exploring wild places, that we think about, what can I do while I'm here? Doesn't mean you got to do it every time. You get to go do your afternoon mountain bike ride after work, and you get to go backcountry ski and just bliss out. And I look forward to a world where you can be out there and think about, what could I do here? What can I do? And that collective action just creates incredible change in the world.
My business brain is going crazy right now. I just pictured an app where I could tell it, hey, I'm going to Boulder, Colorado for the next 2 weeks. Is there anything I can do there while I'm there? And it would be citizen science-y, anything at all. That would be great. And then just having people as a knee-jerk, just adding that to their trips, adding that to their travels, and just thinking like that automatically. That sounds like a really cool world to me.
Yeah, great minds think alike, I think. So if you go to platform.adventurescientists.org, we're still working on this. It's a beta, it's early. My team might be mad at me for sharing that on a public radio or podcast here, but platform.adventurescientists.org. You tell us where you're going, you tell us where you live, you can look for scientific projects on there and opportunities on there. And I look forward to the day that advances and is in your hand as you're at the trailhead.
That is crazy. I swear I did not know this page existed. It's not linked on the site. That's nuts.
Yeah. We're still in development mode on that, but anybody listening here can get a sneak peek.
Well, of course, you've just created a lot of people who are going to be bugging you to finish this up now. I hope you know that.
Yep.
Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm very excited about work like yours. I wish there were 1,000 more of you. I think with the amount of data and projects and silos that people could go into, there could be, but I wish you continued growth. Everybody can check out adventurescientists.org. And you can support the organization. You can be a volunteer, but do find out everything that you can, because I think you're going to be very surprised how big this is getting. Greg, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Really awesome to be on, and I appreciate you having us.
Thanks for listening to the Rewilding Earth Podcast. We do what we do because of you. This podcast is supported by listeners like you who long to live in a wilder world. Please consider donating at rewilding.org and subscribe to our weekly news and article digest while you're there. To go the extra mile, you can follow and share Rewilding Earth on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Bonus points for sharing this podcast with your friends. To listen to past episodes, go to rewilding.org/pod. That's rewilding.org/pod.